install retrofits to help them improve their energy efficiency and reduce operating cost. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about energy reporting requirements. It's actually a state statute where local governments in certain counties are required to report their energy usage to the state and commit to a 5% annual reduction in their energy use. And then finally, in the first part, I'm going to talk about funding opportunities. There's a lot out there, and I don't even cover, I mean, I barely scratched the surface in this one. So, you know, I'm hoping we can have sort of a discussion about which areas are of the most interest to the group to maybe identify some projects worth pursuing for federal funding. Part 2 of today's meeting is going to focus on clean cities specifically. So clean cities is all about energy efficiency, but on the transportation side. I'm going to be talking about our annual reporting requirements, where I ask anyone in our region who's adopted alternative fuels to report any recent purchases that they've made or recent additions to their fleet, so that we can track as a region our petroleum use reductions and our greenhouse gas reductions over time. I'm going to talk about priorities for the Clean Cities Coalition for 2023 and beyond. We're going to be doing some strategic planning throughout 2023 to help us meet recently developed goals for fuel use and for greenhouse gas emission reductions. And then, just like the previous section, I'm going to talk about all the money that's available for vehicle upgrades. And then I want to have a little bit of a discussion about the program-wide funding opportunity announcement that the Department of Energy's Vehicle Technologies Office is going to be releasing in the next few months. So with that, I'll get started on the Regional Energy Management Program. So we're working with the State Energy Conservation Office. We're contracting with them to provide a wealth of information and resources to local government. So you'll see on the left the jumbled mess of federal, state, and local agencies and organizations, all of which have just massive resources to help local governments. We got FEMA, we got the Department of Energy. DOE is a very big one for both the building side and the vehicle side. We're going to be leaning heavily on our partners with SPEAR to help with building code roundtables. There's a lot of money coming out of the federal government from the infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act. So there's a lot, and it's overwhelming even for me, and I'm sure everyone is nodding their heads in agreement with that. This is a very busy time of year. I wasn't around for the 2008 stimulus. This is like 2 or 3 times the size of that. So our job with SECO is to kind of corral this information, all these resources, and make it digestible for local governments to be able to easily say, oh, hey, you know, we have the capacity to be able to do this program, or this program is interesting to us. You know, can you help connect us to, you know, other resources from across the region? And so through our agreement with SECO, we're going out to local governments and engaging with them to get them to better understand energy efficiency. And when we say local governments, we're talking about not just cities and counties, but we're talking about public schools, universities, hospital districts, municipally owned utilities. So there's a lot of different clients. State agencies are also who we're targeting for this outreach. And so we have a set of deliverables that SECO's requiring. The first is to do a survey for local governments to identify areas of energy efficiency and energy management that they're most interested in, or maybe identify areas that they perceive to be a challenge for adoption. So we're trying to get a sense for, you know, as a region, what are the greatest needs in terms of, subject matter for future workshops, and potentially, one-on-one activities regarding specific programs. And so after the survey, we have a series of workshops that, again, are going to be partially determined based on those survey results. Of course, we're having this one today prior to doing that survey, but on the next slide, I'll actually have a QR code for my local government attendees to scan, and that'll take them to that survey. A little ahead of myself there. We've created a website, and we'll have the link on the next couple slides. This web page is going to be a clearinghouse for all of the resources for energy management that we come across. Anything that any webinars that other organizations are hosting, we'll be sure to include those on that web page as well. Benchmarking and reporting energy use is a big component of this program. Since it's a state statute and it's handled through the State Energy Conservation Office, they're really focusing on getting more local governments to participate in these, again, required by statute energy reporting activities. And then we're also going to be talking about Energy Star and getting local governments to utilize the portfolio manager through Energy Star to take ownership of their own energy management. I keep doing that. And then there's an opportunity for program expansion and partnership opportunities. We will be developing new relations, well, not new relationships, but new in terms of the natural resources program at AACOG. We have longstanding relationships with, folks like TDEM, the Texas Department of Emergency Management. Our public safety department works with them quite a bit, but natural resources doesn't. And there's an opportunity for a partnership with TDEM in terms of shoring up our hazard mitigation plans to include energy resiliency. And that's just one example. And then overarching everything that we do with this program is the principle of environmental justice and ensuring that any benefits, especially from federal investments in infrastructure, making sure that those benefits are being felt by the entire population. And so 40% must be felt by underserved communities or disadvantaged communities. And so any activities that we're doing with regional energy management is done through the lens of environmental justice. Okay. So here's a link to the survey. If you can scan the QR code, or we will provide a link in the chat directly to the survey if the QR code isn't your thing or doesn't work. But please take the time to fill out this survey. We don't think it'll take any more than 15 minutes, but we really want to hear your thoughts about energy management, some of the principles associated with that. So we look forward to reading your responses. And like I said before, these responses are going to help shape the content for the next several months. Okay, so for training, education, and outreach, we have workshops and we have roundtables that we're planning. We have on the workshop side, on the workshop side, we have today's webinar, of course, and then the next webinar that we're planning, we don't have the topic yet, but it's going to be based on the survey responses and what the greatest need is for that. Sorry, I keep clicking the mouse. And then there's also a workshop for councils of governments, all the councils of governments in the state. And that topic is yet to be determined. We were actually one of 3 councils of governments across the state to receive these grants from AACOG. AACOG up in DFW is one of them. And West Central Texas COG, who covers Abilene and surrounding areas, they were the 3rd recipient. So we're going to coordinate with each other to ensure that the topics that we're doing for statewide COG attendance don't overlap too much, so that statewide we get a broad variety of subject matter. So we will be coordinating with our fellow COGs who also receive this funding. And then for roundtables, we have already on the schedule for May 4th, we have a roundtable dedicated to PACE. It's going to be for local governments who have not yet adopted primarily, but there will also be a lot of good information for property owners in jurisdictions that have enabled PACE. And I think that they're going to get a lot out of it as well. And then on the, to be determined is a roundtable dedicated to energy resiliency and incorporating those into hazard mitigation plans, and then a building codes workshop that will be working in conjunction with SPEAR to get some subject matter experts. All right, so I mentioned our website. It's very easy to remember, acog.com/energy. So that's our kind of dashboard for this energy management project. And I have just a screenshot there on the right-hand side that shows the different tabs showing all the different resources that we have. We're going to be including on this website a couple of white papers that are still in development, but these are going to cover best practices among local governments, and the feasibility of different regional programs, any recommendations for the design of efficiency programs for homes and businesses, maybe if innovative ways to get more local governments to report their energy usage, or anything not listed there. The topic is pretty open, and if you have any ideas, or if your organization has done something innovative with energy efficiency, we want to hear about it, because there could be a case study as one of these white papers too. So keep an eye out on that for our website. All right, so I mentioned the big component of this project is energy reporting. I mentioned that it is a state statute that requires local governments in non-attainment and affected counties to first implement all energy efficiency measures that are practicable in order to reduce electricity consumption. And as part of that, they have to establish a goal to reduce your electric consumption by at least 5% every year for 7 years. And you have to report annually to AACOG regarding your efforts to meet that goal and the progress that you have made under that section. And there is an opportunity for local governments to exempt themselves from this reporting requirement if they can demonstrate that they have included all available cost-effective measures to improve their energy efficiency. The non-attainment and affected counties that are under this requirement are shown on the left-hand side of the screen. For our region, that's Bexar, Comal, Guadalupe, and Wilson. Of course, Bexar County is non-attainment for ozone, and the other 3 are considered affected counties, meaning their air quality is not quite at the level of non-attainment, but they're either close to a non-attainment county or their population is high, such that they could potentially be non-attainment at a later date. So on the bottom right corner, I have a QR code that will link you directly to the AACOG energy reporting survey. So, local governments, I highly encourage you, if you don't already report, definitely report your energy usage. Just make sure that you have a year of utility bills available so that you can calculate your energy usage for that year. And when I did AACOG's reporting, I found that was really the most time-consuming part, was just compiling all the energy bills. Once you get all that, it's just adding it up and inputting it into that survey. Really, the only thing that's required is to report your energy usage, but there are opportunities to report your water usage and any other renewable energy usage that you either generate yourselves or that you purchase through power purchase agreements. AACOG wants to know about all of that. And then we're also going to be, we're going to have actually a separate roundtable for benchmarking purposes to learn more about the Energy Star Portfolio Manager system, We're going to be working with local governments so that they can set up their own accounts in Portfolio Manager to be able to track their energy usage over time. And so we'll be providing assistance, technical assistance. There's several webinars out there. If you click, and we'll send this presentation out to the group, but you'll be able to click to learn more about Portfolio Manager, and they'll take you to links to webinars that have been done in the past. And they're always doing webinars too, so you can, if you have questions, you can actually engage with the Energy Star staff directly. All right, so I mentioned environmental justice, and Justice 40 is the Biden administration's executive order that sets the 40% benefits to underserved communities threshold. And so the Department of Energy, is ultimately where this money is coming from. They're giving it to, they've awarded it to AACOG, and then AACOG is, the pass-through, so AACOG has to adhere to, these 8 different environmental justice metrics. And so they've defined 8 and provided a couple of examples for how to measure those categories. So decrease the energy burden in disadvantaged communities can be measured through the money saved in energy expenditures because of technology adoption. One that we're focusing on quite a bit is increase access to low-cost capital in DACs, or disadvantaged communities. With our PACE program, that makes it very easy to go out into to engage with certain organizations, maybe like we engaged with SAGE, a couple years ago about PACE. So increasing access to low-cost capital through the PACE program is something that we're very interested in. So that's an overview of the Regional Energy Management Program. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the resources that the State Energy Conservation Office, or AACOG, offers to local governments. They support the City Efficiency Leadership Council, which is part of SPEAR that I mentioned before. They collaborate with city and county staff across the state to share energy efficiency best practices. There's the Lone Star program, which provides financing for energy retrofits to local government facilities. And the interest rates on these loans are actually really, really good. AACOG just received a loan through that program, and it's like, I think it's under 3% interest. It's a really good rate, especially for right now. But yeah, so we actually have $1.5 million financed through this program that we're going to be using to upgrade our heating and chilling equipment, install a building management system that will, that'll include automatic shutoff for light fixtures. We're converting everything to LED. So it's a really, really good program for local governments. We have the PACE program, which is financing for commercial and industrial properties, and now governments have a program that they can take advantage of as well. The AACOG also offers preliminary energy assessments, and these are free energy assessments for local governments that will recommend a suite of cost-effective energy efficiency measures. And they actually have engineers come out and inspect the site, inspect the equipment, and provide a list of upgrades that local governments can engage in. So these assessments, they're not just for cities and counties, but any school districts, universities, port authorities, airports are also eligible to receive these assessments. But if you're on here and you're not a local government, you may be interested in similar programs for the private sector. Texas A&M actually runs 2 different programs. They're funded by the Department of Energy. There's an industrial assessment center that provides energy assessments for industries. And then there's a building performance assessment center that provides energy assessments for small and medium commercial buildings up to 100,000 square feet. And there's potential for, a little leeway on some of those requirements. Say if it's in an underserved community, for example. But these Texas A&M programs they're basically available to 150-mile radius around A&M, so it covers most of AACOG. There's some counties who are right outside that circle, but I think it's worth. If you're interested in something like that, I think it's probably still worth reaching out to them. Maybe they'll make an exception to that, but I can't make that call on their behalf, of course. That's right. Yes, 150 from College Station. So that there's, I think, Frio, McMullen. I think they're on the edge of that. So, but certainly we would do everything that we can to help. Maybe make an exception for businesses located in those areas. And so a little bit more about energy efficiency financing. I got kind of ahead of myself, but so Lone Star is a revolving loan, and it's low interest just for public facilities. And these applications for Lone Star are accepted, I believe, twice a year, and the next deadline to receive applications is August 31st of this year. So that's for local governments. On the right, we have a property assessed clean energy, or PACE. I've mentioned PACE a few times, but that's private financing. So it's not through SECO, it's through private lenders. It's low cost, no down payment, long term, 10, 15, potentially 20 or more years, depending on the type of improvement. But it's for energy efficiency and water conservation improvements to equipment that's permanently affixed to the property. And it's eligible for commercial, industrial, nonprofit, and large multifamily properties, so 5 units or more. Applications are ongoing for this program, but the stipulation is that your property has to be located in a city or county that has adopted PACE. And there's 14 cities and counties across the region that have adopted. City of San Antonio is one of them, so that that ropes in a lot of potential clients for PACE, but there's still a lot of areas in our region that are not yet covered. So if you're a property owner that's in one of those non-covered counties, you might consider reaching out to your local elected officials and seeing if they can't get that adopted for their city. And we're at AACOG, we are happy to work with you to help convince local governments. We reach out to local governments all the time. In fact, one of our deliverables for the SECO program is to get 2 new cities and counties to adopt PACE. So we're very interested in increasing that number beyond the 14 that we currently have. All right, so now I want to talk about some funding opportunities that are out there, or that a lot of these have just begun. So we're on the front end of that, but a lot of these grants don't have a lot of time. They don't give you a lot of time to apply, and you kind of have to have your partnerships already developed. But one that I wanted to talk about is a climate pollution reduction grant. And the purpose of this program is to develop climate pollution reduction strategies. Climate action plans is what this is for. So cities, counties, local air pollution control agencies, and local governments within a metro area have to coordinate and identify a lead organization to administer these planning grants. But how it works is it's a formula grant, and up to $3 million is being offered to each state, and up to $1 million is being offered to each MSA, to the 67 most populous MSAs in the country. So of course, San Antonio is included in that. So there's the potential for $1 million in climate action plan development funding for the MSA. The thing is, you have to submit a notice of intent to participate in order to access that $1 million of funding. Those are due by April 28th, and the full application is due on May 31st. Letters of support, of course, are strongly encouraged in these as part of these applications. There are 3 main deliverables associated with the planning grants. By March 1st, 2024, a priority climate action plan must be submitted. And then a little bit more than a year after that, there's a comprehensive climate action plan that's due, and then a status report at the close of the grant. These climate pollution reduction grants actually are, going to be in 2 phases. So the planning grants are what I just talked about, but there's an implementation grant phase to this program that has not started yet. There's guidance, there's limited guidance out right now, but additional guidance is forthcoming. We're expecting later this year. But the implementation grants, that's the money to actually get these plans into projects. To actually get dirt moving and not just, have it sit on a shelf. You cannot go after implementation grants if you don't have a priority climate action plan in place, either for your MSA or if it's a state doing it, you have to be covered under that state plan. So it's very important, I think, that we strongly consider going after these planning grants, because I would hate to miss out on implementation funding. I mean, look at the difference in funding. $250 million for the planning grants, $4.6 billion for implementation. There's a lot of money there for implementation, getting these plans into action. And I wouldn't want perceptions of maybe political difficulty in getting a MSA-wide climate action plan together. I wouldn't want that to deter us from going after it. So let me get into a little bit more information on this program. So this notice of intent to participate is required by April 28th for metro areas who wish to go after this funding. These notices of intent to participate have to indicate the lead organization to oversee and be responsible for managing the funds and coordinating activities and reporting to the agencies. There has to be a letter or memo signed by an authorized official that can be either in any of the 4 categories below, but this notice of intent to participate has to have the backing of that authorized official, whichever one it ends up being. And then a clear statement indicating which MSA is being represented by the lead organization. So it's not, the notice of intent is not a huge, lift, but you have to do the notice of intent in order to get the planning grant funds. There will be assistance in the form of climate innovation teams to help grant recipients with technical assistance, maybe one-on-one assistance or peer-to-peer learning activities. So there's a lot of guidance out there within this program and also within other programs that I'll get into a little bit later that can help, that make it easier to develop these comprehensive plans. And so this slide here shows what components need to be included in the priority climate action plan and then in the subsequent comprehensive climate action plan. There's a greenhouse gas emission inventory that's required, and you have to quantify potential measures, and you have to quantify what the potential for greenhouse gas emission reduction is. You have to do a benefits analysis for low income and disadvantaged communities, and you just have to demonstrate that you have the authority to implement a climate action plan. And so that's required by March 1st of 2024. And then the second phase that's due in the summer of 2025 is the comprehensive climate action plan. And so it includes a lot more components, a workforce analysis, targets for greenhouse gas emissions, a plan for how you're going to leverage additional federal funding, and doing a more robust analysis of low-income and disadvantaged community needs. And so, again, that's due in the summer of 2025. The priority climate action plan is really important. I mentioned that you have to have that in place in order to apply for the implementation grants. The comprehensive climate action plan does not have that same requirement. I think that just has to do with the timing, because the implementation grants should be opening towards the end of this year, and the comprehensive climate plans are not due until at least a year after that. So just this issue of timing makes the priority climate action plan just extremely important to have in place. And I wanted to talk briefly about this one. It's a little bit more of an exclusive program. It's only the 4 entities listed there towards the top of the slide. They're the only ones that are, going to be getting any funding from the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program. But you can see the values up there. The city of San Antonio is getting over $1 million. Bexar County is getting almost $500,000. And then New Braunfels and Schertz, being the next, largest cities in our region, they're getting a bit less funding, but still, this funding is available to each of these 4 entities. You just have to submit a pre-award information sheet by April 28th. That's a big day, April 28th, to be eligible for that block grant funding. But this is going to come in the two different forms. There's grants, which are going to come with the normal rigorous reporting requirements and programmatic requirements that most of us, I think, are very familiar with on the federal grant side. But there's also vouchers that are going to be an option for this funding that are not going to be nearly as robust on the reporting side, but they're going to be a lot more limited in what you can do. And it's really only available for technical assistance and equipment rebates. But there's a lot of potential programs just for equipment rebates and technical assistance. So still potentially a lot of value out of the voucher program. If you want to know more about the voucher program for these block grants, you can click the link when I send out the presentation there at the bottom right. It's on April 13th at 2 p.m. And the DOE is providing quite a bit of helpful information. These blueprints that are being provided to help local governments identify what kind of plan they want to implement. That's very helpful. I was looking at it the other day, and I can see using these project blueprints to help inform your priority climate action plan. So a lot of interplay with these grants. And I'll take any questions if there are any. We went through that a little quicker than I thought. Okay.
Are there any carrots or sticks from the state legislature to work on these plans and submit them to the state office? Or is it one of those things that Texas is really good at, require but then don't enforce?
It's that, yeah.
Okay.
There's no enforcement.
Okay. And there were 8 Justice 40 benchmark.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to just demonstrate one, or is it all of them? Or?
No, it's one, minimum of one. Yeah, I mean we can choose as many as we want. Some of them, I think, I feel like they're more long-term goals. I mean, you're not going to get, community solar implemented, by the end of August, which is our contract period. So those maybe, we're not focusing on so much. The ones that are, we can easily target with the resources that we have currently.
And then my last question is about entities that have not adopted PACE. I don't get that. What's the barrier? Why is that? Does it just need a champion in every jurisdiction, or what are the objections?
I think having a champion helps, and in some cases having a business that's interested in PACE helps. I know Navarro County did that several years ago.
It's just inertia.
Yeah, I think so. And we've had a couple of big projects close recently in San Antonio, and it seems like that's ignited some interest. Yeah, but as far as the ones that have not adopted, I mean, it's there's a lot of intricacies, I guess, with the program. A lot of assurances to make sure that each project is successful. So we have a lot of requirements in the application process, and I think it's just the complexity. I think, yes. How about online, Larissa? Do we have any questions? And I meant to say, if y'all have questions online, please just submit them into the chat. I think there's a separate question option, but you don't have to do that. You can just type it in the chat. I didn't hear that.
I noticed Frio County is on the lower end of San Antonio. My school districts still qualify.
So yeah, most of AACOG's resources are going to be, so if you're talking about a school district, AACOG will do anything. All the resources they offer, they're statewide. So there's no restrictions. It's not just for affected counties like some of these other requirements. It's if you're in the state of Texas and you're a local government of any kind, you can access these resources for things like the Texas A&M programs, the energy assessments that they do. I think Frio is outside of that 150-mile radius, but they have told me that they are willing to be flexible with that requirement and some others if there's a demonstrated need for it. I hope that helps. I see. Okay. And were there any other questions? I didn't see that one. Where was that? Is it in the, oh, it's under questions. Okay, well, I'm glad you can see it because I can't. Okay. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, we can get into the Clean Cities portion. Okay, so Clean Cities it's a Department of Energy program, and their goal is to advance affordable domestic transportation fuels and technologies. So what does that mean? That means alternative fuels is what we usually call them. Anything that's not gasoline or diesel, basically. So natural gas as a transportation fuel, propane is very popular among school districts. Of course, electric is a very high profile alternative fuel these days. Hydrogen is another one that's a little bit farther off, but it is definitely up and coming, and there's a lot of interest in that, especially for long haul trucking applications. It's looking like hydrogen might be the more favored method of fuel over, purely battery electric, but that's still being worked on. But clean cities exist to provide opportunities for peer sharing or information sharing among peers, technical assistance, collaboration among stakeholders. I consider a stakeholder anyone who has adopted alternative fuels or is interested in adopting alternative fuels for their fleets. But Clean Cities provides grassroots support, and we're able to do that because there's some 75 different coalitions across the country. Some of them cover entire states, some of them just cover metro areas like the ones in Texas. But we're able to better provide resources to our communities because we're among our communities. We know better than anyone else what the needs are. And so we're able to better identify cost-effective solutions more tailored to the area that you're in. So Clean Cities is housed within the Vehicle Technologies Office of the Department of Energy. And the VTO does a lot of different things. They're involved in basically the research and development of alternative fuels. And that can be anything from the fuel systems themselves, but also materials technologies to make vehicles more lightweight and energy efficient. That of course includes battery technology, investigating new and potentially innovative solutions. Lithium, has it's a complicated topic, so researching additional battery components. And then there's energy efficient mobility systems. That's connected and autonomous transportation, communications between infrastructure and vehicles. And then there's technology integration, which is where Clean Cities falls. So it's taking all the R&D, the complicated stuff, and introducing it into the marketplace. And so we have 4 different program areas within Clean Cities that help us integrate those technologies. So we provide information and tools. The Department of Energy has the Alternative Fuels Data Center, which has a lot of different resources for alt fuels. We provide financial assistance. That can be either through direct funding, like we have with the DERA program, or that can be through connecting organizations with relevant programs like the ones we're discussing today. Then Clean Cities also offers technical assistance. So if there's a question that you have that I can't answer, we have teams at the Department of Energy and our national labs that are experts and are able to provide answers to those, real, highly technical questions within 48 hours. So we like to lean on them a lot for that kind of technical assistance. And then we offer training, outreach, and partnerships to train people on new technologies that arise, provide outreach to anyone interested in learning more about it or interested in adopting it for themselves. And then of course building partnerships with people like our like CPS Energy, are of course very important with vehicle electrification. Different business organizations like the chambers, we're always engaging with them on different grant opportunities that are out there. So Clean Cities does a lot of work. One of our requirements as a Clean Cities Coalition is to report annually to the DOE any sales or implementation of alternative fuels among fleets, any deployment of alt fuel infrastructure. So if any new charging stations are implemented, we make sure that we report on that. We're also interested in idle reduction initiatives. Truck stop electrification is part of that. Fuel economy activities, and reductions in vehicle miles traveled. So anything related to transportation and energy and emissions, Clean Cities is interested in. And so the Department of Energy and the National Renewable Energy Lab analyzes data and then translate them into, how many gallons of fuel have we displaced, or how many tons of greenhouse gas emissions have we reduced through the adoption of alternative fuels in 2022. And so we need your help if you have alt fuels in your fleet, or if you've purchased them or had any new vehicles deployed in 2022. We definitely want to hear about it. So I've provided my contact information through phone or email, so that we can add you to that report and you can be included in our progress toward greenhouse gas emission improvement. So this just gives examples of what we're interested in. It's not just, the vehicles that you purchased. We want to know about non-road equipment, so equipment that doesn't travel on roadways, so construction equipment, forklifts. If you've purchased any of that equipment that runs on alternative fuels, we want to know about that as well. Fuel economy improvement examples are also listed. So if you've maybe purchased low rolling resistance tires for your vehicles, they reduce particulate matter emissions. So we want to know about that as well. And so on the right-hand side, it just gives a list of when I ask for your information, what kind of information do you need to provide us that helps us calculate the greenhouse gas emission reductions or fuel use reductions. So we want to know, what type of fuel you're using. It's more helpful if we know the amount of fuel used in 2022. If you don't have that info, we can take the percentage of time the fuel was used and the number of miles traveled per vehicle and come up with a pretty decent estimate of the fuel displacement and the emission reductions. We definitely want to know the number of vehicles in your fleet and whether you operate the majority of your time in a city or within cities or a county within counties. Basically, are you working within a very small area or a very large area or somewhere in between? All right, and I just want to talk a little bit about some of the priorities that I've been thinking about for 2023 that I've heard from the community that are important projects to engage in. Every coalition has to go through a redesignation process where you go before the Department of Energy and basically state your case that you're an active and effective coalition and that you deserve to get continued funding from the DOE. We actually had our redesignation webinar in October, and we were redesignated, so that was a very big milestone for us. And we had some feedback that came out of that webinar. I think the three most important ones that came out of that webinar was that we need to hold more stakeholder meetings and have them at varied locations, not just at AACOG, but having them at other maybe CPS Energy's grid rooms would be a good location for a stakeholder meeting. So just give some variety. It kind of helps the subject matter from becoming too stale. Another recommendation was that we engage more with private fleets. I think most of our engagement has been with the public sector up until now. So we were it was suggested that we engage more with the private sector fleets too. And then they asked about, membership dues. A lot of coalitions do have a formal membership process, and whether for us that includes dues or just a more formal, like a committee or a standing committee, that's something that was recommended to us as well. But if we can generate enough value added for stakeholders, then certainly membership dues is something we'll consider, but we are certainly not there yet. But other things beyond what came out of the redesignation that I've been thinking about and been informed about was that there's a really big need for workforce development. I'm always reminded of a story that I had heard about 15 years ago when natural gas had a big push, and there was a lot of adoption of natural gas vehicles, but there wasn't a parallel workforce development program along with that. So when these natural gas vehicles started breaking down, there was nobody with the knowledge to repair them. And so instead of repairing them, they just, were replaced back to diesel. And so all that progress on the natural gas front was just evaporated because we didn't, and I say we, I mean like nationally, there was not a workforce development program along with it. So we need to make sure, another story, sorry, we just installed a level 2 charger here at AACOG, and in doing the planning for that charger and the installation, I was asked, so what happens if the charger breaks down? The only solution that I could find was that we have to send it back to the manufacturer and they do whatever they do to fix it or replace it outright. And so we need talent locally to be able to service these chargers instead of shipping them back to, I think this one was Illinois, to who knows what they do with them. Let's keep that within our region. So workforce development is top of my mind. Along with workforce development is first responder training, and that was something that was brought to my attention a couple weeks ago. There is an opportunity, and I'll get into it in a little bit later, an opportunity for partnership with our Austin colleagues to get some low-cost training to our area. It's wrapped up in a grant application, so there's no guarantee of it at this point, but it is something we're interested in, and we'll be following it closely. I'll get into that a little bit later. But something that I want to do more is leverage intra and inter-regional partnerships. So working not just within our areas, but with my colleagues in Austin or Dallas or Houston. On a national level, one of the Department of Energy's priorities is to engage additional stakeholders beyond our boundaries. And if you recall the map from a few slides ago in Texas, it's very kind of disaggregated. There's not a statewide really effort on the Clean City side. It's kind of siloed into individual metros. So something that I'm going to be doing moving forward is opening up webinars or anything that we do, open it up to regions outside of just the AACOG region. I did this last year with an electric vehicle preparedness webinar, and there were quite a few people from the Rio Grande Valley that attended. So I want to continue doing things like that to include everyone in the state, even if they're not formally covered by a coalition. Another Department of Energy priority is strategic planning. So that's why that's a topic for today, and I'll get into that a little bit more on the next slide. And then just expanding more technical training and education opportunities. I won't get into that but more technical training is definitely needed, and that goes along with the first responder training and workforce development. Those are very closely linked together. So we're getting a little bit more funding this year than we have in previous years. The Clean Cities program is kind of, it's not being reevaluated, but the method of selecting tasks is different, but long story short, it's resulting in more money. So we're getting about 35,000 more more to carry out the mission. So with that additional funding, I do anticipate expanding the coalition staff. There is an intern program that the Clean Cities program offers. And so I do plan on applying for that later this month and getting an intern on staff, and hopefully, maybe transition to a more permanent position. But with that extra funding, we have a lot of potential for more resources, and that's something that's very exciting to me. There we go. All right, so the DOE is asking every coalition to create a multi-year strategic plan. As part of that requirement, there were goals that were established to achieve yearly increases of greenhouse gas emission, or okay, sorry, I have my acronyms all messed up. Yearly increases of greenhouse gas energy displacement by 16%, and then reduce greenhouse gas reductions by 20%. So increase the amount of gas and diesel fuel that we're avoiding and reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. Okay. Yes, you reduce, increase your energy displacement is going to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. But those are the goals, and they're very ambitious goals. A 20% reduction annually in emissions, that is ambitious. But if you're interested in serving on an advisory committee to help develop the strategic plan, I would love to have your input. If you're online, just indicate in the chat if you're interested. Just give me a simple yes if you're interested. If you're here in person, you can sign up at the end of the meeting to indicate your interest. But a draft plan has to be submitted by October 30th, and then a final version is due to the DOE on January 30th, 2024. Yes.
What are priorities, categories, look at on the reduction?
Who asked that? Maybe we can have them come off of mute. I don't see the question still. Well, do you have their name? Okay. Oh, I see it now. Okay. Okay. Okay, now I can't get rid of this. Okay. Okay, let me go back to the annual report slide. So for fuel economy improvements, this is the list of different methods that achieve fuel economy improvements. Even things like driver training would qualify. A lot of these are improvements to the vehicles themselves, vehicle retrofits, using lighter weight materials. I don't know what cylinder deactivation is, but that is a thing that is used to improve fuel economy. But the most common, we're looking at is using alternative fuels in lieu of petroleum-based gasoline and diesel fuels. But if you implemented like an idle reduction policy for your business, that could be something that's definitely something worth reporting. I hope that helps.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so there is this organization called AFV Educate, and they offer training to first and second responders as well as the automotive industry, and they offer education about alternative fuels. So electric, they have courses for just electric vehicles, and they have courses for other alternative fuels. And these courses are tailored to support the needs of the Clean Cities Coalition Network. And so I have just a sampling of the different courses that are offered. For every electric, there's a companion gaseous fuel course. So this organization, AFV Educate, is applying for a grant from FEMA. And so they're trying to get, a dozen or so Clean Cities coalitions, involved as project partners for this. And so we signed on to Austin's letter of support to jointly have first responder training. They're going to be offering 3 trainings at really, really, really low cost. I mean, these are normally like $1,000. I think they said $5,000 training courses, but they're going to be offered at very, very low cost. So that's something that's, I'm very interested in, and they're open to traveling. They've in the past they've traveled 100 miles one day, and then the next day to do the training somewhere else. So with Austin and San Antonio together, that's like the perfect kind of size area to do something like this. And so we're waiting on that. I think the application deadline for that is the end of this month. So there's a lot of wait and see on that front, but I'm exploring potentially other low cost options. Maybe there's if we can get enough interest, maybe that $5,000 cost can be distributed and made much more manageable on a case by case basis. But anyway, first responder training is very high priority for us. All right, we're going to talk about some grant opportunities that are currently available. And we have a few people from TCEQ on. I don't know if they're with the grants division, but if y'all have a question and I can't answer it, I might lean on my TCEQ attendees for assistance. But with that, so there's the Government Alternative Fuel Fleet Program. It's the most recently created of the TERP programs. TERP is Texas Emissions Reduction Plan. And they offer financial assistance statewide in a lot of cases to reduce NOx emissions by promoting fleet replacements, vehicle replacements, and retrofits. And so this particular program is just for local governments. Well, not local governments, but state governments too. But these are competitive grants to purchase or lease new vehicles that run on alternative fuels. So the ones I mentioned earlier, electricity, natural gas, propane, hydrogen, liquefied natural gas, those are all alternative fuels that are eligible under this program. The deadline to apply is May 16th, 2023 at 5 p.m. This grant does not require that you dispose of your old vehicles. A lot of other grants do require that, but this one actually allows for fleet expansion. You just not going to be scored as highly on that relative to somebody who is replacing their vehicles, because the idea is to get the old dirty diesels off the road. And so any state agency or political subdivision with more than 15 motor vehicles is eligible. And The grant you receive may include refueling and charging infrastructure up to 10% of the total cost. The TCEQ is prioritizing certain applications. State agencies get the top priority, but local governments are also high priority as well. Fleets that are in non-attainment or affected counties get higher priority. Non-attainment gets the highest priority, so anything in Bexar County may be scored higher than something in our Comal or Guadalupe or Wilson counties, all other things being equal. Heavy duty vehicles are getting top priority, and that corresponds to the grant table below that shows the amount awarded for each class of vehicle. Of course, heavy duties are going to get more money, they're more expensive. And then vehicle replacements are prioritized. So you can, you are eligible to expand your fleet, but you won't receive as many points as somebody who is replacing those vehicles. And so if there's something you're interested in, please scan the QR code there on the bottom left. There are a couple other TERP grants that are active now. There's the Texas Natural Gas Vehicle Grant Program. It ends, I believe, on Friday. And then there is the ERIG program, the Emission Reduction Incentive Grants program that I believe wraps up April 4th. That's really only going to be for stationary equipment and select non-road equipment, railroads, locomotives, marine vessels. It's pretty restrictive compared to some of the other grants, but it is something that's active. So on the national level, we have another relatively new grant that was announced. This is the Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Grant. I think a lot of you by now have probably heard of the NEVI program. That's the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. The state of Texas submitted its plan back in September of last year, maybe even before that. But it's the program that builds up fast charging infrastructure along interstate highways. This program is a companion program to that, but it's more intended to kind of fill in the gaps off corridor. So there are actually two components to this funding. There's a community program, and then there's a corridor program. Both allow for alternative fuel infrastructure development, whereas the NEVI program was just for EVs. This one is a little bit more broad in scope. But the key with this infrastructure funded under this program, it has to be publicly accessible. It can't be restricted access for any people or any times of day. It has to be publicly accessible at all times. And there's actually very rigorous standards that the government has created to ensure that these stations are always available. They're requiring like a 97% uptime, which is very ambitious given what I've seen just in real life. So that's good. Like this, it's absolutely important for effective deployment of infrastructure and a successful program implementation. Okay, let's see. So this is $700 million funding right now. This charging and fueling infrastructure program is actually in the infrastructure bill. It's a 5-year program with $300 million for 2022 and $400 million for 2023. 500, 600, and 700 million are on the books for 2024, 25, and 26. But of course, that is dependent on appropriations at the federal level. That money is not appropriated yet, so it doesn't, it's not, money in hand yet. But over the course of that 5-year period, there's $2.5 billion in funding that's going to be available. This is just the first 700 million of it. Let's see, community grants. grants for the community program, they're going to be a little bit smaller, anywhere from 500,000 to 15 million. But for corridors, that award size is a minimum of 1 million, and there's no maximum. So a lot of money potentially for building up alternative fuel corridors. We have been asked, we have been approached by a hydrogen fuel supplier about potentially partnering with Dallas and Houston on a hydrogen infrastructure grant for the Texas Triangle. And so, to the point earlier about, encouraging more inter-regional partnerships, that's something that we're exploring the feasibility of. Councils of governments, MPOs, those are all eligible for to receive this funding. So, that's something we're looking at. We got, it's not just us, but again, Dallas and Houston. So we have to see if it's feasible for each of us before we can actually proceed. But just know that there is that interest out there. And then the deadline to apply for this funding is May 30th of 2023. Very, very, very small window. Okay. And then I think this is the last thing I wanted to talk about with Clean Cities was every year the Vehicle Technologies Office issues a program-wide funding opportunity. And it's you choose your own adventure pretty much. You have 12 different areas of interest that you can do, and what you do within each area of interest is is up to you. But sorry, there's 12 different areas of interest. The first 6 or so are related to the R&D side of the VTO, things that Clean Cities doesn't really have direct involvement with. Certainly if you're interested in improving lithium sulfur batteries, more power to you, but as coalitions probably wouldn't be all that helpful with that. But areas of interest 7 through 11, those are the ones that Clean Cities is more compatible with. In case I need that. And so I just wanted to show you what the different areas of interest were. I'm immediately noticing workforce gaps. So improving that's something that immediately jumps out at me as a potential topic of interest. This FOA is not actually a FOA yet. There's no, the announcement hasn't been formally made yet. This is just a notice of intent to release a FOA. So it's still, they do, the good thing about these is that they allow for 3, 4, 5 months of kind of preparation where you get the notice of intent to release the FOA. You can do your planning on the front end there, and then they announce the FOA formally, and then there's another 3 months to apply. So they're a little more generous with the time, I think, than some other agencies are. But this is just something to think about. I don't have any formal plans for going after any of these topics. It's just just something to think about, like I said.
Is there any thought about working with Alamo colleges or stuff?
We'll be working with, so I've initially reached out to workforce. And yes, and they did say that they would be working with community colleges. I need to follow up on that. Yeah. Any other questions out there? I think this might be the last of my Clean City slides. I did really well on time. Are there any other questions, Larissa? Wish I could. I'm not seeing any.
The hydrogen supplier that you mentioned in terms of the Texas Triangle, they Texas-based, they based,
They are not Texas-based.
they call it Texas Triangle? Is that just? I'm asking because I had this company in Canada talking to me, described Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Golden Triangle.
Oh,
I said, no, no, no,
that's
no.
Beaumont, Port Arthur,
Thank you.
Orange.
I
Yeah.
said, don't ever say that. That means something in Texas, so I didn't know.
Okay.
Texas Triangle or something.
It was not them. It was not them. No, I don't think it was. Yeah. But they did say Texas Triangle.
Yeah, I don't know where they're getting.
Yeah.
You're answering questions.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that. I thought. So, okay. So, okay. So it wasn't like a serious question. No offense. No offense. But she was asking who is this hydrogen supplier that that we're potentially coordinating with. She had asked if it was this one group that Jill is familiar with. They referenced the Texas Triangle as the Golden Triangle. She was asking me if it was that same company. It was not. Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry about the mics at the table. They don't seem to be picking up that well, so we'll be sure to address that for next time. Well, I'm curious. I mean, does anyone online have any thoughts about some of these programs, the grants that are available that are going to require some collaboration among potential partners? Any thoughts? Any thoughts on maybe like the feasibility of creating a priority climate action plan for the MSA? Are there any concerns about that? I mean, I just think it's it's important that we don't leave that money on the table. If so I mentioned that the 67 most populous MSAs are getting, well, can get $1 million for this, for climate planning. If any one of those 67 declines the funding, then number 68 is going to get that million, and so on and so on. So I would just, if we turn down that funding, then somebody else is going to get it. Did everyone have a chance to look at the survey that Larissa had posted into the chat? Just want to remind y'all that that is in there. That's the survey that's going to inform future topics for workshops related to energy management. Okay, well, as we wrap up, I do want to invite y'all to take another short survey. Well, this one's really a short survey, just 5 or 6 questions. Letting us know what you thought of the content of the workshop. Let us know any areas that you might be interested in taking a deeper dive into. I just did a very high level overview of some of these grant programs, but you can spend a whole day on some of them. There's just a lot of information. So if there's any of those topics that sparked interest that you want a little bit more information about, please let us know as well in that survey. I believe there's a kind of an open space to leave any other comments that you have. All right, we got someone did the survey already. All right, thank you. All right, well, that concludes the presentation. I've got my contact info there on the screen. Please reach out to me if you have any questions or if there was anything you want to learn more about. I'm happy to come to you and present to you in person if you'd like. I'm open to anything, but I do appreciate your time today. Thank you for joining and putting up with the technical difficulties at the beginning. And I'll leave this on for a little bit longer in case y'all have any questions that come up. But other than that, that concludes this presentation. Sorry. And if you need me to go back to a slide, I can do that too. But thank you all for coming.